isn't that so much more beautiful in the end than not being? Like this is what it is
And
to
then
be.
you have to consider that you're asking, what does morals think of what God did? And it's like, well, that moral came from God.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting contemplation because it's just like,
This is God
if
pondering about
morals
his own
exist,
morals.
then God is pondering, what does it mean to be infinite? He's trying to know
That is a
himself.
very funny way of thinking about it. Me on my tiny little dirt bike on sub 1 being like, am I kind of like an asshole? Oh my god. But Jesus Christ, that is hilarious. But uh so yeah, so with that of course positioning of good and bad, where of course it's completely entirely relative from which position you're looking at it from. Uh the God position. Um it oh yeah, and that ties into what I was talking about before, where like the framework, an ego is to taste. It is, it tells you to eat. It demands you to eat. And it's like that is almost like God taking his sacrifices and like being like you were saying, the dog with the rotting flesh. He's taking these sacrifices, these beings which he's put to the cosmic slaughter, and being like, but eat. But look at all the beauty I've bestowed you. You know what I mean? Like, but look at this. Look at what you have. Look at existence itself. You know what I mean? And it's like that's what an ego is to taste is saying. It's like, yes, all of the divine cruelty, yes, all of that. It's very, very true. But look how beautiful it is. Eat it, consume it, be here right now. Feel what it feels like to be God as the sacrifice. Like everything you do, every
And
action you make is God sacrificing. Like you stop viewing it from the human perspective and you begin to view it from God's perspective automatically. But what were you gonna say?
one of the best ways I see it is just, when you exercise, you do it for growth, and it hurts your muscles. It destroys it. It feels bad, and yet it still grows. We might feel bad here, but there's growth to be had from that.
Very similar to trips. Uh, Lots of bad, but good for the long term.
Yeah, and
But
also specifically with a connotation um of from complete darkness, there is the light, which mirrors psychedelics a lot because, like ayahuasca, I always heard that it was like throwing up that would like start it,
yeah,
and that's kind of like what happened uh, with me, uh, which was very fun because it was there, which we need to become, and I am is perfect.
maybe not there anymore. God damn it.
It's not just stopping, but like it's not like I wish it didn't happen. It's like I'm glad that the nightmare happened so that I could,
Appreciate it.
I guess, yeah.
Okay, so get this. God, were you gonna say something else? Let's go ahead and say it.
No.
Hold on. So, fuck. So, whenever, so what I was just talking about, the man and God, right? The experience of sacrifice. With that comes the confidence, and the confidence comes from the being God. And why are you God from framework perspective? So this is something that I still don't get yet, and I think I may do have the answer somewhere, but I don't know it right now, so I don't know it that well. Why are you God from a framework perspective? I still don't get why that happens every time I do this. Why, when I understand everything, do I immediately click into the perspective of God? I understand context. Um, um, hmm.
What? Look,
So,
say it again.
why am I God from the framework's perspective? What about an ego is to taste is making me understand that I am God? Like, in other words, I could just as easily
Because
understand the framework and understand that my position is as the sacrifice and not as the sacrificer. But yet, that's not how it's viewed ever. So go ahead. What were you saying?
I mean, just the ego is active. It's turned on. The power's on there, and it's doing stuff. It thinks it is, and that creates a separation. between it and God. The default neural network is firing. But when that slows down and activity decreases and it thinks of God and it becomes God. I forgot how to tie that into what I was saying. But
I know what you mean. I see what you're saying. We're talking about why you got from why are you got it from the framework's perspective, and you were talking about how as your neural network slows down, basically it has to do with the fact that as your right brain lights
so
up,
because
you're going to
that there's
naturally
nothing left
become
of
God.
it. Yeah, it's like you are right now on an island in the middle of the ocean and the water is rising. And why is it that when the water floods the island that you become the ocean? Well, because there's no more land.
It's also like this: eating makes you God. Well, God, yeah, it's right brain. Eating is right brain. Right brain makes you God. That's exactly what you were saying. But from the framework perspective, that's what it is. It's the eating makes you God. The eating is the transition from you being the sacrifice to you being the sacrificer, and also the divine confidence. Right. So
Taking
this.
an
Go ahead.
taking being a part of the process of eating, realizing that you're not just the subject of this reality, you're a participator in it, and that you need to eat too. And when you begin eating, you realize that there's a great eating going on. There's a great meal. There's a feast going on, in fact. And that is what you're looking for.
That is a very good way of putting it. Fantastic way of putting it. Even the great feast, my friend. That's what we're at. We are the divine devourers of the great feast, my friend. But
Yes.
so the divine confidence. It is uh it is that so first of all it comes from the feeling of being God, and specifically, yeah, I was thinking about this earlier, where it's like you get a confidence from eating. God, this is so interesting. On the call, we just figured out what I was thinking about earlier up on the mountain. God, that's so fucking cool. I love it when that happens. Whenever you tie two moments into each other and you literally finish the question you had 3 hours ago in a completely different fucking conversation, which had nothing to do with the things you were thinking about earlier, and yet still answers that question. But so the question I had earlier was why does eating inherently give you confidence? It was basically like, why would I immediately? So it was. We'll just use Peggy as the example here. Why, when speaking to Peggy, would I gain massive amounts of confidence just from consuming my conversation with her? Why do I gain massive amounts of confidence just by understanding that my conversation with her is infinitely perfect? And the answer is because, like you said, it's opening. You're just closing your default mode network. It's opening your right brain, and basically what's happening is I'm becoming God. It is that divine confidence, and what it means to become God is to understand everything in context, right? And that divine confidence is just just the understanding that you are the sacrifice, right? It is the understanding that literally you are God sacrificing this person right now. God damn, that is really the perfect way to put it. It's like the understanding that you are you are God, you are the thing, you are the black hole, you are everything. And a symptom of everything, a symptom of you being yourself, of you eating, of you reaching out, is this sacrifice right here, right now, towards you, towards becoming you. This little morsel, this little being talking to the Walmart applications, this thing is your sacrifice. This is one of the things which you have put to die, to feel, to live, to be, right? One of your little morsels, one of your hands, one of your eyeballs, one of your sense organs reaching out into the world, reaching forever towards you. A sacrifice which is destined to reach forever in your direction because that's how you willed it. You know what I mean? It is you. This thing talking to the Walmart employee, it is you reaching towards you. And in that moment, everything clicks and your right brain completely takes over and you eat and you consume and everything is perfect. Fucking Christ, dude.
That
This framework is so perfect. But what is it? God, I can't believe
that
it. It's
that's
so beautiful.
that sparked a very vivid visual in my head of sacrifice and what that means, and was specifically with the connotation of sacrifice, including like ritual death and blood, and specifically like the idea that we're we are non-being. We are like God sliced a cut into himself. We're the blood that trickles out. We are that cut. God cut into himself to do that. He cut from infinity to create finitude, and we are that, and there's pain in that, but I guess he has some reason he did that. perhaps it's just like all things, just to cut it, just so that it grows again, like muscles and calluses and human experience.
Here's a way to view that. That the cutting is destruction. The cutting is the destroying of the self being totality. The cutting or injuring is the separation of totality into separateness. The becoming of separateness, the becoming is the wounding. And the same vice versa. God becoming us, Xzaayzyx becoming Zyx is cutting, and Zyx becoming Xzaayzyx is cutting. That's what I mean by my version of sacrifice, which is that we are to feel the pain, the burden of what it feels like to always reach towards God. That is our injury, our cutting. And God's burden is to feel what it feels like to always be destroying himself, tearing himself into multiplicity.
One of the problems this solves, in as far as human thought, is creation good or bad? Where some will think it's inherently good and that God should have done it, it's a good thing that He did it. While you have some that says creation is a defective version of God and that this is a mistake and that we should turn away from it, and because of its bad, because of its it wasn't supposed to happen. It is inherently flawed. And that's kind of like the Gnostics. They think the demiurge is inherently evil, that reality was created by evil. But what this solves is that it is inherently both. Um, non-dual, bro. But it's both. It's both good and bad. Where you can say, is it good or bad for you to feel pain if you're going to grow from it? Well, the pain is bad, yes, but the growth is good, yes. So it's both. So I think, I mean, that as far as like what to tell others, like, hey, we solved this problem that people were having for so long, and
But also,
as always,
there is one thing which is important to clarify, which is growth is a complicated term in this because on one hand we are always growing towards God, and on the other hand God is always growing towards us. And you could easily say there's no growth actually happening. It's really a form of stagnation, a form of eternity,
yeah,
right?
it's like we are the wound. God is healing that wound. We are being healed. The same process is occurring, and when we meet in the middle, there's perfection. It's healed.
Dude, and you just perfectly transitioned me into a complete another topic, which is in the notes. Dude, this is really fucking good. I really feel like there's like a 99% chance that we're gonna start recording and find out we got no audio or something because this shit's too good.
Uh
But
huh.
so, a black hole.
Is there any way
Um,
for you to check right now?
I already did. I checked the last recording to remember what I was saying, and it was working fine. So I mean, we're good basically. There's a
Okay.
100% chance
I
from my
just
current perspective that we're good, and that means that there's a 0% chance that we'll actually be good in the future. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But so, the what you just reminded me of, which is the idea of growth, right? The idea of growth being stagnant, right, is basically the idea of the Platonic year, right? Which is to say that it's infinite difference. But if you are to zoom out of that infinite difference from the point where you look at it as the whole, then a Platonic year is when everything, every difference which could possibly exist has already existed, and now we cycle back to one, and eternity restarts, in the words of Nietzsche. And it was I was just thinking about it like oh, there are lots of things I was thinking about it really. Hold on, let me start writing something down. Black hole, black hole.
Hey, can I say
Um,
something?
yeah, but
In my research of Ouroboros, I found the theory that the symbol of infinity came from the idea of the eternal cycle of specifically Earth's orbit, because in a year it would create, if you looked at it through 2D time, the sun rotates in the shape of an infinity symbol in the sky. Um, over the course of a year,
say
and so
say
expanded to
say it again.
um, that in a year the sun rotates in the sky in the shape of an infinity symbol, and that there was theorized that that's where the idea of the infinity symbol came from, and in its relation to
What the
specifically
fuck?
uh, uh, like
That is
the
incredible.
eternal cycle, because that is directly related to our specific tilt, the
And
Earth's
that's
specific
true?
tilt. Yeah,
Wow. God damn.
there's a lot of like crazy stuff as far as like the Earth and the stars and the moon and like just the planets, like geometrically. There's perfection to it. It's created with intent patterns.
You betcha. Um, yeah, I mean, for sure. There's lots of interesting stuff there. I really do gotta one day study the whole astronomy shit. You know what I mean? Like the shit one, the shit slop one. What do they call that?
Well, no,
Astrology?
astrology. That's not what I mean.
No, no,
I think there's.
I know that's not what you mean. What I'm saying is, I need to study the shit one day, just because I'm interested. Like, I'm sure it's 90% shit and 10%. There's some here. There's a little tiny something here that you can learn from it. You know what I mean? And I'd be interested to see what that is. You know what I mean? Just so I can make a video for the stupid astrology bitches and maybe have a bridge to them understanding the infinite. You know what I mean?
Well, most certainly, I think we can definitely use that to attract as many audiences as possible.
Yeah.
And I think as far as astrology, I think that's one of the main ones I found that like hasn't really shined in my overall research that I've done. And maybe it is. It just doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, I've never seen anything good
It
from
seems
it.
like whatever it is, if it has any benefit at all, it's like the knowledge that the specific the location of a planet will affect your mood on a particular day, like that has no benefit. Like you don't know, like there's nothing to do with that really.
Yeah.
So it's just like, even if you really got it, I just don't see it, and there's too much research put toward that when you could just be researching God itself, not necessarily that. But
And be much better
there
off
is,
with your mood.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
However, I would say
interesting.
in general, the sacred geometry, that's something I want to more extensively research. Um, which is just the more like, I mean, that's what Plato and Pythagoras was
There's
looking
one
into.
Instagram account I follow who shits on it all the time.
What for?
He just hates it. Hates it. Like all the time he rags on it. And it's just like, name one fucking important discovery which has ever come out of whatever, what did you just call it? Uh
Sacred geometry?
Sacred geometry. Yeah, he's just like, it's self jerk off horseshit. Basically, what his criticism is. I've never done any research on it, so I have no idea. Like, I have no clue whether it's good or bad at all. I just know that I follow one guy on Instagram who despises it. So, who knows?
What is his general deal?
Well, to be fair, the guy's deal is that he's clearly researching math. Um, his whole meme page is about philosophy and math and how they tie into each other. His username has to do with that. I'm pretty sure he's going to college for a math degree right now. Um, so that's his deal.
Yeah, I would say to the mathematic who is trying to get into like the academic side of it, yeah, sacred geometry is not for you. In the same way, like researching actual in-depth philosophy and practicing it is not a thing for the academic philosophers.
I would definitely be interested in sacred geometry though. Let me know if you find any good videos on it. Yeah, I've heard it has to
Yeah.
do with like fractals and stuff too, doesn't it?
I mean, it has to do with the creation of like any given religious logo, a symbol, any like how they built religious buildings in the past, and by living alongside of it, which is obviously not what the mathematician is looking towards, but living alongside sacred geometry, which is essentially the mind of God, you are going to live a better life. That's what ancient people practice. It's what was it was put throughout all the religious texts. You would see particular numbers and symbols.
So, white hole, black hole. Let's just jump in right here. So, the idea of the Platonic year, right? That the thing I was thinking about it was
Which is related to sacred geometry, by the way.
that white hole could exist within black hole. Let me explain that. White hole is Zyx reaching towards xzaaayzyx. Do you see what I mean by that? So white hole in our universe is something which creates infinitely or infinite difference, right? Whereas a black hole is infinite oneness. Do you see what I mean by that? So a black hole is God, right? So Zyx reaching towards God is white hole, and God or one reaching towards Zyx is black hole. So black hole is God reaching towards people, and white hole is people reaching towards God. You see what I mean?
Hmm.
Okay, so I was thinking, basically, wouldn't it be more accurate for it to be less of a Platonic year and more of an infinite difference within one? As in, just very simply, isn't it more likely that you could have one bubble simulate itself multiple times before other pieces of the bubble simulated themselves? Do you see what I mean by that? It's like, in other
Say it
words,
again.
couldn't you have one bubble? Like let's just say it's much more common for me and you to exist throughout the multiverse than it is for Xzaaayzyx, the destroyer of the multiverse. You know what I mean? Let's just say he's a real rare guy across the multiverse. You know what I mean? You don't see him pop up very often. He's got extra dimensional abilities. There's a 1 in 1 billion chance that he appears with an infinite difference. However, me and you, we're cropping up all the time. One in every 5 infinities has got us in it. You know what I mean? So of course that's extreme over exaggeration, but if you think about it from that perspective, it's like one reality may be more common in the infinite difference statistically than other realities to simulate themselves within the Platonic year. So, in other words, you can have difference create itself multiple times before a different difference is created. So, a Platonic year shouldn't actually be considered as everything which could possibly be different simulating itself, but it should be considered as there really can't be a Platonic year because all you have is infinite difference constantly becoming more different as it gets reabsorbed by the one, and it's just always becoming more different. Do you see what I mean by that? It's just like if you have a white hole inside a black hole, there is no start and end. You just have a constant, forever writhing into nothingness, a constant, eternal movement that isn't bound by a pattern of start and finish, but is just forever thrashing.
Well, I think the cycle is essentially what it looks like for us. We see our universe in cycles, but for it is eternal. There's no such thing as an on or off. It just is. Um, but in that process, it creates what seems to be a cycle. The same way you could say, right now we are technically having one extremely long breath throughout our life that only goes in and out, and we are only here to label it as in and out. But there's only one long breath. There's only one breath.
I suppose the only point of the distinction that I'm making would be to say the feeling of what it feels like to mean that. If I talk about the Platonic year, that has its own meaning. And I would say the meaning of the Platonic year, viewing it from that perspective, would be to understand Nietzsche's idea of eternal recurrence. When you have a Platonic year, you have the ability to say what Nietzsche said, which is that within God, or like what you were saying, which was basically that like it exists only as itself, not as change, but as the complete self. And when you view it from that perspective, then you can understand you and this as eternal within God. Every moment of this will happen again eternally within God, given enough time, and it has infinite time. So this is eternal within God because this will never stop existing because God never stops existing, and this will always exist within God. And that's the benefit of looking at it from the Platonic ear. But if you look at it from white hole inside of black hole, um, then and by the way, here's a way to explain this. You can explain the Platonic ear with the concepts of white hole and black hole by looking at it this way. You expand white hole forever outwards until it gets too large, or in other words, until you've simulated every kind of difference. And once every kind of difference is simulated, then it collapses into a black hole, which eats all of the white hole. And then once the black hole has eaten all of the white hole, the process resets and it forms back into a white hole. So that's how you could view the Platonic ear with the concepts of white hole and black hole. But to escape the concept of the Platonic ear, and to look at this concept, which is a white hole inside of a black hole, this provides the feeling of thrashing, the feeling of like randomness, the feeling of just like just screaming out into infinity, and this being one of the infinite things which is there. Like they're two things which mean the same thing, and it really is just depending on the perspective. In the same way free will exists if you exist before this moment in time, and free will doesn't if you exist after this moment in time. This is the exact same kind of thing where the Platonic year exists if you're looking at it from outside, but the Platonic year does not exist if you're looking at it from inside. But if you're looking at it from inside, it provides this feeling of like inescapable. Like I used to describe it as like a bag over my head, like a feeling of just like thrashing, just like it will never end. It can never stop. I'm eternally within the cycle of life and rebirth, and this is one of the infinite things which is thrashed out by myself, and I can never ever escape. Like that is the feeling whenever you view it from white hole inside black hole, and then you have the feeling of more like peace and more like serenity and more like loving the moment if you look at it from outside and you look at it as like this is eternity and I will exist here for eternity, and not it's like kind of what you were saying, the difference between meaning infinite meaninglessness and infinite meaningfulness, where if you view it as like random thrashing, white hole inside black hole, it's infinitely meaninglessness. It just this moment is just one thrash, one infinitely small grain of sand in the desert, which never stops getting bigger and bigger, which is God. And then if you look at it from outside, you look at it as this is one beautiful little piece of sand in the infinite sea of God. You know what I mean? It's like that's the difference between those two perspectives. Very interesting stuff right there. Um, yeah,
I would say there's value to both.
absolutely. Yes, both are true. But yeah, so that's just an interesting concept as far as Zyx reaching towards Xzaaayzyx. That's white hole, and Xzaaayzyx reaching towards Xzix is black hole. Just a very
Here,
cool.
I'm gonna write that down. Say that again.
So Zyx reaching towards Xzaaayzyx is white hole, and Xzaaayzyx reaching towards Zyx is black hole. And then also, after you write that down, tell me.
So Zyx to Xzaayzyx is Whitehall.
Yes, and vice versa is black hole.
Okay.
And get this, that also perfectly explains left brain, right brain. Zyx reaching towards Xzaaayzyx, that is any left brain, and Xzaaayzyx reaching towards Zyx, that is right brain. God, or black hole, is to eat. And that also talks about the framework. That is also the dynamic between interdimensional and fucking black hole and eating. It's like, think about that. Think about the fractal nature of that. That's just fucking wild. And then within an ego is to taste is included all of that.
Wait. Okay. Say that again.
So,
Trying to write it
wh-
down.
so white hole, black hole. You have Zyx
Okay.
towards
Don't go back from the beginning. I'd say it was the Xzaayzyx and Zyx is the black hole, which. And then what was the other thing after that?
Then the next thing after that was that you have hold on, I said it perfect the first time. I want to try and say it perfect again. Hold on. It was digitally inclined you become. It's just more understanding other realities. And that brings me to
Yeah.
another thing. That's another perfect segue. How is in relation to thought texture difference in relation to thought texture difference and is thought